Jason is going to amaze us, right?
Under promise, over deliver. I might upset you and you might have a bad time. You might be bored tonight. So I'm going to over deliver on that promise.
I've got a hammer.
Okay, that's good. Okay. So I'll show you what I'd like to demonstrate to you guys tonight. I've seen a lot of people do perforations and carvings and stuff. And sort of one day I was like, gosh, that's a lot of time. Could I still get the effect and do something a little bit, a little bit faster? And so I decided I'd play around with drilling and drill jigs and just started with my first one, which that's the first time I did that. And that was sort of one attempt, which is kind of fun. And then ended up using spray dye on the outside, lacquering it. And then the color I probably do in the most inefficient way possible. I dip it in paint and then I just paint with a long brush through the holes by hand because I just found I got better control. So there's probably faster ways to do it, but that's just how I did it. After I did that one, I did this one, entered it in a competition and got a second place on it. So that was kind of fun. Again, same process, just some gold paint on the inside. But pretty much I've also done bowls. I gave one away as a gift, so I don't have an example and I didn't want to bother with the PowerPoint tonight, but you can also do this with bowls. I've done a bowl that had all these holes kind of patterned in it, which is really cool, like a fruit bowl or something. Wouldn't recommend it as a cereal bowl for obvious reasons. But anyway, so that's kind of what I got into with doing that. So of course the technique, I'm going to show you a small hollow, medium hollow form. I couldn't go too small. And so I'm trying to balance between not boring you with drilling too many holes and not boring you with hollowing. The cool thing is you'll be able to see some of the hollowing technique. So for some of you beginners who haven't experienced how to go about hollowing, I'll talk a little bit about that because you'll be able to see inside. I also brought a video display to sort of show that as well as best I can. I got into some other ones later, started playing with different hole configurations. This one I really started to play around with, can I force the diameter of the holes to get smaller to kind of reinforce the dynamic in the piece? So if you sort of look at this piece, it almost feels kind of fabric-like or elastic-like just because these holes really get small at this point. That kind of emphasizes the form. So I really tried to play around with doing that. And again, this was painted red through the inside. I was kind of inspired by, if you see like Norwegian designs, they do a lot of stuff, just beautiful wood, and then that Norwegian red that you see a lot in some of the work. I'll pass these around. One thing about this technique is when you do hollow, it has some challenges. So this is one that blew up, but then I kind of not perfectly glued back together. So I'll just pass this around. But one, and then this one is just another pattern that I was trying to emphasize, a spiral, slightly different technique. But the main thing I just want to show you, kind of when you compare a couple of these, is kind of the first choice you want to make is, well, how many holes around? And some of that is rational. It can be done mathematically. Some of it can just be what looks good or what feels right. But probably the first thing you want to think about is sort of the number of holes. So this one, on my particular land, I got 12 holes.
Jason, could you please stand behind the light?
Yeah, sure thing. I'm out of the camera, aren't I? So this one has 12 holes on it, right? And that gives you kind of a different look. And this one's kind of the same diameter, but this one only has 9 holes going around it, right? Now, there's a point, obviously, that aesthetically it would look bad. Like if you had 4 holes or something, it would just be a big hole. But, who am I to judge? Go for it if that's what you want to do. So just, I've been playing with spacings and just playing around. But for me, the idea was just to kind of have fun playing with something as simple as circles and try to see if I could get organic forms. I was sort of inspired by a seashell. So even though these geometries you see in nature, I was kind of trying to play with those. So I'll pass these two around. And here's one on this side. If you're going to drop one, drop that one because it's broke one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with the first step, and I'm just going to shape the form. I've already gone ahead and all of these, when I do the hollow forms, I like to turn them in grain, and I'll turn them green. So this is some green cherry. Again, to not bore you as much as possible tonight, I went ahead and turned it around. So again, spindle roughing gouge, bit it out. I put a tenon on on the end. And what I found is one thing I could do is I could go and transfer this to a chuck, and that would be a fine way to do it. The shape of the piece I'm going to do tonight, it's going to be similar to that smaller one going around. I'm just going to do a bigger, more open version of that so you can see what's going on. The reason I've got this between center still is I find that drilling the holes, I find it a little easier to access what I need to, because by the time I mount this in the headstock, I'm not going to get the angle I need with my drilling jig up here. And so I find when I drill the holes, I'm going to do that between center. So the first step is get the outside shape. So I'm just going to quickly try to dial in a shape. And again, I like to play with proportion. And so you guys have heard the rule of thirds, right? So rule of thirds is 1/3 to 2/3. It's just a beautiful relationship just because, right? Because it just looks aesthetic. It's kind of an asymmetrical balancing. I've made some different dividers over the years that I can dial in different proportions. This one, it approximates that rule of thirds, okay? So I have 1/3. So this is kind of 1/3. This part is about 2/3, right? And so I'm just going to play with that right here. And I could even play with the diameter if I want to relate it, but I'm not going to get that detailed with it. And I'm just going to say bottom of the piece will be here, top here, and I'm going to leave a little wiggle room just for some extra cushion on the bottom. And I'm just going to kind of mark that point, on here. And so this is going to be the apex of the piece, or the highest point. This will be the top going off to the side. So let me just make that mark so I can honor it. Okay, so I'm just going to take a 3/4 inch, 3/8 inch spindle gouge. You can use, or bowl gouge. You can use any gouge you want. I'm just going to rough out the shape. Now this could also be you just turning your bowl profile, but you want to focus on the outside first, because the order of operations you want to do is do the outside, then drill, and then do the inside. So whether that's a bowl or a hollow form, why do you guys think that would be? Why would I drill in between and not hollow it first? And tear out is the main problem, because when your drill bit goes inside, you're prone to tearing out, right? So let me fire this baby up, and I'm just going to go quickly through this part. So, we have the plug face shield. Let me take that. Yeah, well,
And
tell
the story of Jack wearing his face shield.
actually, Jack's just had a big chunk come off his face shield this weekend, right? So yeah, so the ultimate safety factor in modeling safety in here, you always want to wear your face shield. I know personally for me, I'll amend that to when I'm working on things with bark or something that throws up or something. So again, that's kind of how I do it in my shop. But here in the club, we always wear a face shield. So we're going to get that face shield in 2 seconds, and we will be right back to it. While we're doing that, we'll mark this as well. So the main reason I have this mark down here is just to remind myself to leave a little cushion for the tenon on the bottom. So I'll be cutting into that in a second. Thank you, Paula. I know. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Ooh, that's warm. Preheated helmet. Boy, we're living on the. So that's pretty good, roughed out. That's coming a little bit too much to a point to me, so I'm gonna just shape that up and we'll be done with the first step. Since I'm gonna be hollowing, I'm gonna make sure I have a good connection down here so we don't, and we'll call that good enough. Okay, fine, yeah. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is start to think about, okay, what are we gonna do with our holes? And so for this one, you have to think about what lathe you're on. So I had to first check out this lathe to look at the indexing system. Not all lathes have an indexer. This one has one inside. So there's a little wheel on the side here that just engages 36 different positions on this one. Different lathes will have different ones. It all depends what, if your lathe comes with one or not. If your lathe doesn't come with them, there's lots of ways to make a jig yourself using carefully placed wheels. You would just put your indexer on here. There's a lot of resources you can check online for that. You can also, there's some that are available commercially for sale that'll also mount on the outside. It really depends what you're going after. This one has 36, so I sort of had to live within the rule of 36 for that. And so what I found is, I could have done 12, but one thing I was trying to achieve is kind of this offset. You'll notice this one is exactly half a step each row, almost like a checkerboard pattern. And so what I found is if I tried to do 12 out of 36, I didn't have that half step in between. So the math I did, I found out that if I do 9 equal divisions around it, and I just sketch it out, it's not like anything there, I could do that. So I could get 12 holes, but then I wouldn't get this half step, is what I found. So what we're going to do is there's a little bit of calculation that I just figure out. And this just happens to do with, well, what should my first drill bit be when I go here, right? And start. And one thing I hope you guys will notice on these is you want the radius or the diameter of your hole to be biggest at the apex. And as you go down, you want them to get smaller. That's, I found the hard way that I had a piece where I tried to put a bigger hole in the bottom and it just didn't work out. So definitely we're going to start with our biggest hole here. But the question is, how big should that be? How much space do I really need? Some of that's aesthetic, but there's also some functional structural decisions to sort of think about. So what we're going to do basically is out of 36, I found that 9 equal sections is going to be the way to do this. And so if we sort of take that and think of how that divides into 9 equal sections, that's kind of what we're going for. And so if you think about the math for this, each one of these sections is going to have an area that's going to be the hole. And then you're going to have an area that's going to be the space, right? And then in the next area, you would have the hole in the space, the hole in the space, etc., right, as you go around. And so what we want to know to figure out the size of that hole is we want to know the circumference around that part. And we only have to do that measurement just sort of once to get the ball rolling. And again, you could also just eyeball it. I've done it that way too, but I just found that this gives me a little bit more sort of control over things. So you take the circumference and then you're just dividing by the number of holes that you want to do. So in this case, we're doing circumference divided by 9. So I found that this, having one of these little guys, this is something you don't use in your shop mostly. If I had to borrow this from my wife and she said, bring it back or die. If it gets dirty, die. All tools are shop tools, right? So I just find that this is real convenient to come in here. And what I find on here is I have 18 3/8 of an inch, okay, at that point, right? So we'll just say circumference is 18 3/8. So if you're good at your decimal conversions, 325, yeah. Okay, so 18.325. I don't do that kind of math in my head, so this is when I pull out 375. Look at you. See, the scientists in the room are like, I don't trust you because it'll mess up my thing. So I've got to, what did you say? It was 375? Yeah. So it's, 385. So we got, all right, 18.3. Oh, 375. Excuse me. I thought you were doing the math, like the division in your head. I thought you were really, 18,375. Sorry, when you're demoing, math just goes out the window. I embarrass myself every day with bad mathematics in front of my students. All right, so divide by 9. So what that tells us is for each one of these segments for this particular piece that I just measured right there, we got 2.04, and it's wood turning, so don't go too many decimal places. It looks silly and people will make funny. Okay, so 2.04. So if we look at that and we look at each one of these sections, just look at this up here. So we know that in 2.04 inches, I want to have a hole. And then I want to have a space before the next hole, right? So really all we're doing is we just need to decide how much hole do we want and how much space do we want. What do you guys think would be a good aesthetic to consider?
1 to 4.
1 to 4, that might be a good one, right? Okay. If you did that, you're going to get really, really small. Yeah, you can use 1 to 4, right?
No,
But 1 to 3, you're just pulling my chain, right? Yeah, so 1 to 3 is a good one to use, right? So I could come out there. Sometimes what I'll do in the shop, if I don't want to pull out my calculator and do the math, I'll just take this up to a ruler and I've got my dividers right here. But since we're on here, we could just do the math. So we just take this amount, and basically your hole diameter is whatever percentage. So if you think of this as 100%, you can just say, oh, well, this is going to be 67% and this will be 33%. Or
1 and 2/3.
right, or you could do something, right? So you're already calculating for me. I like to have a calculator because I know myself. I make mistakes like that when I'm in my shop, right? So I'm just going to multiply that by 0.67, and that tells me that that's the tool I need to get is 1.379. Now this is where your decimals don't matter because I don't have a Forstner bit. That's 1.379, right? But what is my closest bit? Huh? Now, yeah, so we could go to 1 3/8. Is that closer? Yeah, because my next one up is 1 1 1/2, right? So yeah, so I'm just going to start with 1 3/8. Now,
Harold says buy more tools.
okay, so if you really want to nerd out, go for it. Okay, I'm not going to stop you. But when you see, I'm going to recommend that you buy less and buy higher quality. Okay, who knows the best quality Forstner bits out on the market? Okay.
In your hand?
No, well,
The ones you steal.
so yeah, the ones you steal from your friend. Okay, I'll pass this around. Please don't drop it. Maybe I should pass a cheaper, smaller one around. Hold on. Okay, here's a cheaper, smaller one. Here, I'll start it over here. Guys can pass around. These are made by a company called Fish out of Austria. Fish. Yeah, something like that, right? And I looked at the price of a set of fish, and they were like over $500 to get like a full set like this. And then I just happened to come upon Freud Precision Bits, and I noticed, made in Austria. I did not know that. Freud, how do you pronounce this? Freud. Yeah, I like making it sound like the old psychologist personally myself, but yeah. And so these are actually made by Fish for Freud, and they're like half the cost. So this whole set was like, I think $200, and they've lasted me well. The main difference for these just versus your standard Home Depot ones is you have this nice serrated edge. And let me go behind and show this to the camera. So you can sort of see there's a, oh, they cannot see. Okay, well, in a minute, you're going to see, you see this nice serrated edge on there. It's much different than having the teeth because that just slices in really nice on there. So you want to make sure you have ones with a point on it. And so it is worth getting your better tools. Now, hopefully I didn't pass around my 1 3/8. No, we're good. Okay. So we're going to start with 1 3/8, which I have right here, which was my closest one. Next thing you want to get, this is actually the cheaper thing to get, some kind of a drill jig. Again, you could probably, there are a lot of creative people in the room. It's not too hard to make something that does this in your shop. This one's very affordable. It's from One Way. When I bought it, it was $99 a couple of years ago. It's probably 100 and some change, but on the low end. So it's somewhere near $100 for this. It does not come with a drill. You supply the drill, but you just clamp it in there. The main thing we're going to do with this is you want to make sure that this is centered 100% with your stock. So what I did ahead of time, I have a sleeve on here. I'll drop this down into the tailstock. And that sleeve I know centers the bit right up dead center on this thing. So you do have to get that set up for your lathe. I had to do it for this lathe because I was switching to a different diameter lathe. But this thing just sits right in here. And what's nice about it is I can just loosen it up and I can pivot as I work, and it's just got an arm that goes back and forth, okay? So we're just gonna take this bit that we sized, and what we're going to do is I would have to sit and trace it out. What you can see right here is I actually had to write down and make sure I had my spacing right. So that's me writing all 36 numbers, circling the ones I need. So rather than make your eyes cross, I'm just going to write up our first set of numbers on the index. So remember, I have numbers inside this headstock, 1 from 36. And so to do this, I'm going to start with 1, 5, 9, 13, 17, 21, and 25. That gets me my one set of holes, right? My offset holes are going to be halfway between 1 and 5, right? So that's 3. Halfway between 9 and 5, that's 7, 11, 15, 19, 23, 27, 31, and 35. One of the coolest things you can do with doing this, if you want to get through this process fast, have a friend stand down at this end of the lathe. You stand here with your drill and you just call the numbers out to them. I had a friend and we cranked through them pretty quick. So that was kind of fun. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to start on number 1 here. So I'm looking at number 1 in my lathe. I'm tightening this. The main thing to be careful about is don't forget that this is tightened and then try to turn on your lathe. You'll have a nice smoky smell and your belt will be a few years older all at once. So I'm starting right at the apex. There's no need to draw any lines because the indexer is going to work it out for us. But what's important is that you're going to put the point in where you're going to start, and then you're going to pivot. You see how I can kind of pivot on this point? And what you want to do is you want to make sure that on either side, left and right in that gap, you have equal space. So you're pretty much perfectly on tangent with whatever surface you're cutting into, okay? So I'm just going to pull it up. The other thing you want to do is make sure you're not all the way back. So I'm going to advance this right now a little bit. I'm going to adjust the space, and then I'm going to lock the banjo in place. Pull this guy back. Whoops, I didn't lock this in place. Hold on. Let me get my pivot. That looks pretty good. We'll lock this in place now. I will put on a face shield for this as well, for drilling. Or can I go to glasses for drilling? Okay, thank you. I'll just do that, and then I'll switch back for turning on that. That'll just help me read this a lot better and talk a lot better. I'm just going to go fast through the numbers because who wants to sit here and watch me drill 1,000? I'm going to go fast. When I think it in, what I do is I just go to the thickness of the bit that I have. That's it. That's 1. What's my next number? Okay, 5. Okay, we'll go to 5. And again, my lathe at home, I used to it, but 5. Got a little bit of tear out. That'll sand out. 9. Good Lord, this is. Apparently, you want to screw that really gently. Okay, we got 9. But think about how much faster this is than watching me carve up here. 13. Okay. There's the next one. Okay. I know, there it is, I did trust the math. I'll trust the numbers. Okay, 13. 17. Yeah, if there's some jokers in the back of the room. I got to stop turning that tight. Hang on a second. What's our next number? 17? 21. Okay. Didn't have time to look up any jokes with holes as a theme. So if you guys have any jokes, share them. Huh? What's next after 21? 25. Okay. What? Oh, we did have a whole jug in there. Okay. Okay, what's next? Hold on. Did I not finish my
You didn't finish your.
I didn't finish my series. Let me get my notebook. Hold on. 29. Yes, I'm missing one number.
And 33.
And then 33. What happened there?
There's no 37.
37. Thank you for that. Yeah. Okay. What's my next number? 29. Okay. Thank you. 29. I better put these glasses back on before Paula chews me out. Thank you, Paula. Keeping us safe. Okay. And then what? 33. And then that should go full circle for 1. Okay. Okay. So we're done with that first phase, right? So now the question is, we want to go smaller as we go up. Now, if you want to be hyper religious about it, I guess you could estimate where the next center is, measure that circumference, go through the math again, but there's faster ways to do things. What I do is I just take the circle that's on top. Let me loosen this up so you can see. I take the circle that's on top of each of these, and I just imagine that I have a compass on here, and I just carry that thickness on up like that. From that side, can you guys see that line, or is it too? You guys can see it. So all I'm doing is I'm just carrying that distance forward to the next hole. And then the decision is just sort of, okay, do I just want to step down? And I just kind of decide, I'm like, okay, well, let me take my next bit down, which would be like what, 1 1.25. Well, if I look at this piece isn't very long, right? So maybe I want to be a little more dramatic in what I'm doing. So I just kind of say, okay, well, that's there. And the other thing you have to do it twice, right? So I do one there, and then you kind of come up and you do the other one here, because what we're going to do, remember we talked about doing the offset step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to position my drill like this with whatever diameter we choose. So I'm looking at that, and by the time I kind of step down a few steps, I'm still going to have pretty big holes up there, and that's okay. It's just an aesthetic decision. So I'm just going to be a little bit more dramatic with it, and I'm going to go down to a 1 1/8. Okay. I can see Harold's all ready to go buy some tools. And all I'm doing here is I'm just lining it up kind of with that tangent right there. And I am just putting a mark right here of where that point's going to be. Okay. So now I'm simply going to load this one on in. So I'm skipping to, this is a one-way jig. Yeah, you can get it out of one-way in Canada. You just bought one? Yeah. And, a lot of people use this jig for making, like, if you're doing chair spindles, and you have to get a really weird angle, like in some kind of a splayed leg thing. So if you do any of that, I'm sure you use them for some. No, you don't for some of yours. You just eyeball it and hand drill. Yeah. So, got a master here. Okay. So what I'm going to do here now is, I didn't take note. I should have done that near my 1 position. I just have to find what number I'm near right now, because I didn't know which hole I started on. So what I'm going to do is just kind of come over here, line up that mark approximately. I'm going to see what number I'm on. So I am on about 35. Okay, so that means I'm right here. Okay, so I'm just going to lock in 35 now. This is good and fixed. One thing that's important for this offset pattern, you never want to take your lathe out of the chuck, because you then lose the exact positioning. But for the things like when I do the spiral like this, I use a very different technique. You can make a spiral go up any surface by drawing squares. Oh, sorry. By drawing squares. I'm used to the classroom, not standing under a camera. Sorry. by drawing squares, and then you connect the diagonals. So these lines were drawn by diagonal. And so for this one, I actually wasn't using the indexer as much as just planning the things on the line. So what I'm showing you is just sort of reliant on the indexer, but not everything has to be indexed. The idea is just have fun, play with geometric patterns and holes. Okay, so this is right over here. So if you guys look in the top, I've got this locked at 35. So our next one's going to be 3. And again, I'm coming to the top here, and I got the point right at that area. And then I'm just looking at the gap between it. Don't forget to give yourself some arm leverage here. I'll lock that down. Make sure that's locked. Okay, good to go. And we'll just do that real quick. We'll do a row of numbers. And we might repeat that one more time before you get bored, or do we want to go for the whole piece? You guys tell me when you get bored. Well, okay, that didn't lock in. Hold on. 35. We'll do maybe one more row after this, and then we'll okay, what's my next number? 3? 3. Okay. The only audience participation I can think of, just not bore you. All right. That's on there. And again, I'm going a little fast, so I just got some tear out on there. But you know, if you're really careful with how you're ending, what is it? 7? Okay, so I'm just adding 4 each time, right? Okay, but that's math. It's more fun to have. Okay, what's next? 11. Okay. Oh, the other thing, I'm coming to a knot right now. One thing I was exploring is making knots a feature, and so I tried to not drill a hole where I had a knot, no pun intended, but so you can play with, you know, those kind of ideas as well. That was a harder drill for obvious reasons. Okay, what are we at next? 15? Okay. Once you get in the swing, it goes pretty fast. What's 15, 19? Okay. What's that, 23? Okay. It only takes one mistake, though. I've done it after drilling a few hundred holes. Yeah. 27. Yeah, appreciate the backup. 31. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay, just go back. So now we'll go to pencil again. Just rinse and repeat real quick.
If you were going to do this normally, would you then swing to the other side of the first set of?
Yeah. So, in fact, maybe what I'll do is I think we're close enough. Are you guys bored yet? Should we just finish the piece? It'll be more fun because more shavings will fly out. I promise. Let's see how we're doing on time. Yeah, we're good. I think I can. No, I think I'll need to shorten it up. So yeah, so what I'll do is we'll step down. So actually, that's a good thing. What we can do is just take the same size. Since we're here, we'll repeat it right over on this side. Same distance. So I'm just gonna appreciate you saying that. That saved us a little bit of time. That's a pretty sound. Is that how you wake up every morning?
My bedtime.
Okay. Oh, that's your bedtime. Oh, there you go. Yeah, so again, same thing down here. Okay. Center it up. Make sure I got some swing. Lock it down. Yeah, probably the most important thing to not get tear out is to really get that balance on the drill. So you want the two edges entering about the same time. Okay, let me see what number I'm at. I am at, hey, 35 again. How did that happen? Okay, so do that. Nope, we're not locked. 35. We'll do that one more time, and then we'll step down one, and we'll call it good enough for a demo. Okay, what's that? 3? Okay. A little bit of a jump there. 7. It's a different but not quite as satisfying way to make shavings. Is that 11? Yeah. I'm hogging through it right now, but usually, as you do with most drilling, just approach it slowly. 15, yeah. I usually start off entering very slowly and then I'll speed back. It's too late for math. 19. Yeah, okay. There we go. Okay, Miss Technical. Let's see, where was I? Lost my place. We were at 19, so now I need to go to 23. Okay. Okay, there we go. Oops, is that 24? No, that's 23. Okay. +3 +4, 27. Okay, one more row. And we're back to 31. Okay. Okay, so we were these two size bits. So again, I'm just going to we'll just jump down to one more size and then we'll call that done. And then we'll talk real quick just about hollowing. It is a very intense hollow, because what ends up happening when you hollow this is whenever you hit the row of holes, your tool wants to all of a sudden fly through the wall with a lot more ease. And so you're sort of kind of the whole way of that when we talk about hollowing is you cut through a hole and you kind of rest on it, on that little area that you have a solid area. Then you cut a hole and kind of rest. So I'll talk a little bit about that. It looks like I'm making tea up here.
Now, if you're doing this at home, it seems like you could hollow a lot out just by going in more deeply with your bit.
Yes, that's true. But what I also find is that it's a lot easier when it comes time to hollow, because all those little openings kind of go on your bit, right? Mm-hmm. And if those depths are not consistent, for me, hollowing is pretty fast. Once I get used to it. So for me, once I have my wall thickness in here, I'm not as worried about that, because the thing about this, and one reason that you can hollow this by hand if you want afterwards, but one thing that's important in these is getting that wall thickness as thin as you can. So I do find a camera, it's a good use for a camera in this case. You don't need a camera to do it, but again, just good careful measurement will do it. Yes. That's a good thought, but again, I think what ends up happening is you can set your depth, but to what point on that curve? Yeah, but to the center or to the edge? Because if you're going through a curved surface. Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, that's right. Oh, I see. Yeah, for the perforated vessels. Yeah, that's a technique they use. Yeah, for drilling in for depth. Yeah, I could do that as a non-camera based way to have more accurate depth. So that's.
If you have a strong curvature, depth will be different.
It will be, but
you guys debate why I drill. Let's see. I was at that size. So let's do down. That one was what size? We were 1 1/8, so I need to go to 7/8, right? Yep, that's what I have here. Good. Now, one thing that's cool is you guys will be able to see the bit through the holes as well. Now we're not going to do the strobe. Jack's actually borrowing my strobe for another demo, but you can use a strobe light to freeze motion and see what you're doing as well. So technically, you might not even need a camera if you just look through the holes at what you're doing, but it is a little unnerving if anyone's ever tried a strobe, because it's dangerous, because your mind tells you it's not moving, but yet it is. So, okay. One last go on this. So again, just going to come back up, carry the space over. Okay. Take my bit. It's my 7/8 bit. I'm just gonna line it up on those two tangents right in there and just mark my center right there. Oops. Did you guys catch that? I used the wrong bit to position that. This is what happens when you turn late at night. Yeah, so I'm using my smaller 7/8 one. Fortunately, I caught that. Okay, so I want to go there with it. Okay. Okay, let's loosen that up. Put the point on the mark. Make sure I've got handle throw and balance out the sides. There we go. Lock that in and then find my nearest number, which it looks like we are at number 1 because we're back into that pattern group. Yep. Okay, 9 more holes and then we'll do something else. Will be the knot. Okay, so we're 1, 5. 5, 9. No, 13. Thank you. This is why I double check. It just takes one. It's already hard enough to teach and turn, let alone do math at this. Let's see, 13. 13 plus 4, that'd be 17. Okay, 21. Coming in the home stretch here.
The last 2 holes on the row above are based
I got a wrong number. Yep, I did pick up an error right there. Yep. So that's one of those things. It'll be a design opportunity. I'll put 2 little googly eyes that you get at the craft store in there. I think it'll make it the piece better. We'll figure out how to do that. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Yeah, it only takes 1 moment of lapse. That's why I was extra careful. I think I just misread the numbers when I turned in there. So what number are we at right now? Let's see. That was 25. And we're going to 29. Yeah, thanks for catching that. 29. Okay.
Well, I can back of the impreciseness of the index.
No, not at all. That was an artifact of me selecting the wrong number. I think I was thinking I was on 25 and might have been on 26 instead. It's hard to read these numbers up here today. It's lighting. I'm tired now. Yeah, no, this is a very precise, the indexing and the you do everything right. It's highly precise actually. Probably within a 32nd to a 16th. I would, you know, this jig is pretty solid. Okay, so that's it with the drilling. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn around and just kind of hollow this as much as we'll take, and then probably what we'll do is I'll start the hollowing, you'll get bored of it, and maybe you can get up and converse, do whatever you want to, and then I'll finish up the hollowing. I think that would be the best way. That way, if anyone wants to come up closer, look at the hollowing process. I'll just briefly talk. There are lots of different ways to hollow. You don't need to start with any crazy tools. So again, a lot of people, when they get into, you can do what's called just freehand hollowing, where you take all the torture that the hollowing bit gives you. Boy, I forgot my saw, and this is not going to be. Anyone have a really good knife? Oh, Paula's got a saw. Okay, there we go. Great cut. Okay. So we're going to chuck it up into the tenon. And boom. take this thing down now that I'm done looking at those numbers. Okay, thank you. Been a day. Okay, let's see. So there's that. Pop our chuck in here. And we're gonna pop the piece into hollow. And by the way, if anyone does start demoing, this is the thing you'll always forget. Double check this because, or keep one in your car. Okay, that looks pretty good. So we'll start with that. So what I'm going to do is just clean up this top part real quick just to get a better top edge. Okay, next step just with hollowing is you need to drill something into the hole. Now, some people like doing big Forstner beds, or you can do an extender in here. I don't really have a long one. I know at home I tend to use a gun drill or a thin drill. I didn't have really anything too long, so I thought maybe I'd just start with this to get it started, and I can finish with this one. Or you know what, just in the sake of time, it seems like I'll be wasting time with this, but it actually, I think, save me time. Because hollowing that extra thickness out doesn't take that long. So I think I'm just gonna go with doing one drill. Let's see. So it looks like I can just go the full length. Be good to go. So again, when you're drilling on a lathe with just normal bits, you want to, sort of look at around 400, 500 kind of max in that range for drilling out. And you want to make sure your shavings come out. And I am really high right now. Here, when you put your hand here, there's like just one. The other thing is start in easy, because sometimes it would have been nice if I made a relief cut. Just gonna, I need that relief cut. So I ended up having this is cherry laurel, so the end is kind of cracking a little bit on me and grabbing my drill bits. So I'm just gonna make a relief cut to help guide that drill in a little more easily. Just using a spindle gouge to do that. Just kind of get in past the cut here. Setting my drill up a little better. Oh, there's a lot of cracking in it. Let's see. Or we'll just drill a crooked hole and hope it works. The difference between being in your shop and doing a demo. Okay. Okay, so for hollowing, when you get into hollowing, one thing to consider is getting some kind of a captured system. A lot of people swear by the Trent Bosch as a pretty favorite captured system. And again, we could do this freehand with the right tools. What a captured system does is it just gives you less muscle fatigue and allows you to focus on what you want to do, which is the turning itself. So we're just going to bring this hollower on up. And pretty much all it is just a small 1/8 inch scraper. You don't want to go much bigger than that, because when you start getting up around a 1/4 inch, it catches really bad and you just get a lot more abuse. If you go too smaller than that, it's hard to get a nice clean surface. Although, I've had these go down to a 1/16 or so, but around 1/8 inch to 3/16 is like the perfect size. And it's pretty much just a scraper. So if you sharpen it, you just want to get a burr back on it. I usually have a handle on here at home. I just forgot it tonight. So I'm going to start hollowing, and it'll be pretty straightforward. The main thing with hollowing is you want to make sure you kind of finish your wall thickness as you go down in this. I'm going to go ahead just to facilitate things, make me a little faster. Also gives me more accuracy for my wall thickness. I am going to go ahead and mount a camera over top of this. There are a lot of, Trent Bosch has a system. There are a few other people that do that. You can also make this. The trick is finding the camera that has a narrow enough view. A lot of these little bullet cameras are security cameras. So a lot of people do make this on your own. It doesn't necessarily have to be something you purchase. You can buy a small TV. And all we're going to do here is run the cable from that camera to the TV. And just make sure it drapes out of the way. I always make sure it goes under my banjo and kind of up over here. But what you're going to see happen is we'll get a view, and maybe would it just be best is this camera one we can put on there? Yeah. What you want to do with using a camera system, and again, it's not required, it just makes the inside a much nicer presentation because you can have really nice cross-sectional thickness. The first thing you want to do is center. Let me know when you got that view. Yeah. So all I'm doing right now is I'm just centering the tool approximately in the middle of the screen and locking it down. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a little dry erase marker, and there's a little tool. You could also just use a ruler, but we're just going to put this little tool down centered right on that target. Oops. If it wants to stay put, let me see here. Okay, so we got that cutter bit centered up right in the camera there. And then I'm just going to come over right here, and I'm just going to outline right on the screen with the dry erase marker, and then I'm going to give a wall thickness that I want. So in this case, I'm going to maybe give it like a 3/16, be a little generous. Just come around the sides and then just draw it like that. And so that'll be now a tool we can use just to eyeball where that is inside. Okay, and then we'll start the hollowing process. Scrapers they work better at higher RPMs. I tend to hollow somewhere, and again, there's no right speed, but somewhere in that 900 to 1100 range, a little faster depending on your wood. But you always want to listen, you want to feel what's going on with the tool. So we'll go ahead and hollow here. I'll start the process, and when we hit the circles, it'll get kind of fun and lively, and I'll stop and talk about that. So if we want to look at the camera here of what's going on, I'm just going to enter this piece, and we're just going to start to cut in there, working from the center after. Sure you're locked up. I'll work sometimes from the outside to the center. The middle, if you can just walk to where that tool is, and that marker just gives me an idea. It's like a poor man's X-ray. Although nothing's too concerned. And usually what I do is I use one of these pivots, and I just go from the hand on out to the edge. I'm going a little faster, but and again, you can go until I hit that. Close to the thing. Around to the hole there, and then what I'll do is I kind of go that direction, and then just to clean up the inside of the cut, I'll go along the edge, and then I'll just really dial in that thickness. I'll be barely shaving it off, but I'm just going to kind of take the tool in straight, just to clean that edge up a bit. Okay, now I'm getting near the hole, so I'm going to go in, and we'll start seeing some shavings fly out of here. Almost prepared. Be careful of is now I'm totally in that hole zone, right? And so the tool is going to really want to push through the wall. So I'm making sure I'm constraining, being very aware of where I am. And this is, again, where the camera helps, because you wouldn't necessarily see that if you were doing this blind. You would feel it. It's one of the benefits. So it's something going on up. Cool about this. Normally, Pauline, you gotta stop and blow it out. But with these, you just keep going. It's lovely. Yeah. 8:32. We're good. There, you just heard a break through there. And pretty soon, you guys can probably see, if you get a top view, you'll probably see my tool in there now. But if you had a strobe light, you could stop it. I just have my long handle. Might want to get the in camera just on there. They can kind of see a different view of how it looks from the screen. Oh, all you see is my shirt from the in camera. Oh, okay. Usually blow them up. It's glass cuts in the deep area. So this is where sometimes, even though it seems counterintuitive, it actually helps to speed it up a little bit and take lighter cuts, because this is usually where, and if it breaks off here, you have a beautiful lampshade that I've actually done it. The light comes out and it stays beautiful. What I'm talking about right there. Okay, I'm down to the bottom. We call that done. Except for one thing. When you look in here and you kind of clean it up a little bit, I still got some pretty thick wall thickness. That's fine. We'll leave it thicker because it is a demo piece. But you notice you get a little bit of tear out in here. And sometimes, even if you're careful with this, you'll get little grooves, right? So the way to clean that up is to just use a larger scraper on the inside as sort of the last pass. Because again, you want your inside to be as clean as possible. So one thing I'm going to do is I just kind of hollowed through this real quick. I'm going to clean up the edge first with this just to get the thickness under better control. And then I'll use this scraper just to clean the edge. So if you guys want to get up and converse, that's fine at this point. You're welcome to come up and watch me finish those steps. The last thing I will do. Oh yeah, only if they have a face shield. You can stand off to the side if you want to look at the screen from over here would be safe, as long as you're out of the line of fire. When I finish these up, you can either use a homemade wood chuck, you can use a rubber chucky right in the hole to drive it and just finish up the bottom, okay? I'm going to go ahead and just clean up that inside and we'll call it done. So I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to do a full cut here under this big one. That's where the bigger scraper is going to do a better job anyway. Now for the scraper, the thing about the scraper is you could go and put the wall thickness lines if you wanted on here, but I find with this tool, it just tells you what it needs to do or what it's doing with this. But in the case of the holes, you know, this is the tool that's going to want to fall through those holes really, really quickly. So just kind of keep that in mind, but I'm just going to do it more by feel at this point. And again, if I was doing this on a really long piece, I would do this upper portion first, then get out my scraper and scrape. Then I would do the middle portion, you know, hollowing, get this out and scrape. You definitely want to work down. This piece is sort of short enough. I can get away with doing the whole thing, but on a piece that's, you know, a lot taller, you obviously have to make sure you're working that wall to a finished quality on the way down.
Do you sand the interior?
You can sand the interior if you put sand, but definitely don't put your hands in there. One thing that this technique does need is no matter how good you get it in here, there'll be some schluff around there. So I'll start with some pretty aggressive sandpaper. I'll fold it in half and I'll just go hold a hole. And this is a great thing to bring to sawdust sessions on a Saturday because you can just sit there talking to people.
Speaking of which, there will be one.
There will be one this Saturday at Jack's. I will bring my drill jig if anyone wants to just play around with it. Just don't bring any wood that'll chew up my bits. And so, you know, all I would do is just go in there and kind of clean and, you know, you kind of cut your hands up doing it, but it's, yeah.
We got,
No, so what you can do, this particular piece that shattered, I hollowed it from the bottom, so I didn't have to worry about the neck, right? And so I hollowed from the bottom up to here, and then I hollowed from the top down. So you can sort of split the difference in terms of how you do that. Now to do that, you need to make sure you have a tenon on both ends. So I had a tenon up here, a tenon down here. Remember, you guys also who are doing bowls, you can do this with bowls too. It's the same process. Shape the outside of your bowl, do all your holes on it, and then you go and just do the inside of the bowl as you would. Again, you have the same issue. Your tool's going to want to, you know, you really got to get some good speed to kind of keep those tools and really good tool control, kind of glide rather than push. But that's kind of the, you know, the main gist of it.
So,
Yes.
So that means that you had a tenon that was a ring versus a solid disc.
No. So what you do is you have a tenon on the top of the piece, right? You hollow from the bottom, so you still leave the tenon. Like I have a tenon on here. You part this plug off, and you hollow it from up here. So with this piece was so long. Obviously, this would be too much torque, right? So you need to use something like a steady rest. So I would put this in the steady rest, and then I would hollow from the bottom, right?
With a regular tenon on the top.
With a regular tenon on the top, turning that. And I would turn this neck down to this diameter. I would just leave it solid. Put the steady rest for support because it's so long. And then once I hollow up to the neck, then I flip it around. I would glue with super glue, usually
Okay, so you
glue that back in. It's almost like a box lid. You do a step lid in it, and then you could come in from the top again, steady rest on something again on the top when it's long is how you would do that. Again, I recommend before you get to that, just you want to be comfortable hollowing deep first before you do something like that. You know, start small. I didn't know if this technique would work very well until I practice on something a little more. This one was done from the bottom because I can't get my hollowing tools, you know, through there. That one was done from the top. Let me scrape this real quick and we'll be done. Again, scrapers are going to work well at high RPMs. So again, in a light touch. And the main thing when I scrape is I want to make sure I rest when I get to the hole with the scraper, because it's so much more aggressive that I want to make sure when I hit that hole, I'm gliding across the hole, not pushing in so much. So this is where the camera kind of helps me. Coming in the hole with your contour. I'm on the solid stuff. I'm going to take a little bit of a mental rest. Off the next one. Hear the sound thing. Anyway, that would be pretty much the product. And that's it. I'm just going to turn this around and I'll turn it off. I'll turn it at home, but I'll pass this around real quick. Well, this one I didn't do that way. I did this as a normal hollow form, but if you're doing one of those, you just super glue and a thing. But you'll see it's still not perfect in there, and that's where you'll have to kind of clean it out. You'll do your sanding. I do some sanding on the outside. It's important when you sand these though, make sure you switch your direction after a while because your sandpaper will kind of focus on one side of the hole. Make sure you reverse it and sand it again on the way.
That's why your lathe has reversed.
That's why one reason it does, yes. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'll finish that piece up. I'll donate it to the club and we'll raffle it off.